Hi, everyone. It's Nicholas Sarwark. I'm chairman of the Libertarian National Committee. I'm here on Sunday with my Libertarian shirt on, ready to tell you why it is important for Arizonans, Libertarians, to vote for Arizona Proposition number 205, which would legalize the recreational marijuana. We already have medical marijuana here in Arizona. I want to give you a little background just so you understand where I'm coming from on this. I was vice chairman of the Libertarian Party of Colorado when Amendment 64 was originally proposed, when the first marijuana legalization initiative for recreational purposes in the United States was proposed. And the state board of the Libertarian Party of Colorado voted in favor of Amendment 64. We were the only political party in the state of Colorado that came out in favor of Amendment 64. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans had the balls, frankly, to stand up and go where the voters wanted them to go, which is to stop caging people for what they put into their own bodies. Now, at that time, we had activists who came up to us and said, look, libertarians shouldn't support any kind of tax. That the Amendment 64 had an excise tax that would be attached to legal marijuana, that we should rescind our support of Amendment 64. We should wait until we got some other initiative that didn't have a tax, that made it, Daryl Perry would say, as legal as tomatoes. And until we got that, we should not support any kind of legalization initiative. And I made a choice as vice chairman of the Libertarian Party of Colorado, and it's the same choice that I'd be happy to make 100 more times, which is, if I have to weigh the idea of I pay an excise tax on one hand for a product I choose to purchase, and on the other hand, I continue to put human beings into cages for what they put in their own body. I continue to make felons out of an entire generation of African-American men. I continue to rip people out of their communities and waste police resources on fighting a crime that doesn't hurt anybody. I'm going to pick that other one every single time. I'm going to go for legalization, even with taxation, every single time. Right now, as we're having this debate, I'm enjoying a beer. I bought this beer at the store. I paid a tax on this beer. I'm not going to not buy beer at the store, not be able to buy legal beer because I can't pay a tax, and go back to when we had the mafia controlling alcohol distribution in this country. So for all of those reasons, that's why Libertarians, Arizonans, all Americans should vote yes on Proposition 205, yes on any marijuana legalization initiatives they have that are similar to Proposition 205 this November. And with that,
all right, guys, so my name is Van Gutierrez. I am here arguing against Proposition 205, and I've got 10 big reasons why I am against Proposition 205 being voted in favor of here in Arizona. Well, back in Arizona. I'm here in Iowa right now. But first reason, Prop 205 has the potential to destroy Arizona's medical marijuana program, and I plan on hitting all these points, so bear with me. The second reason, Prop 205 has no meaningful marijuana decriminalization, which means that most of the felony penalties, okay, that remain in place for low-level marijuana offenses, all right? And there is a reoccurring backlash to this with a lot of open loose ends that do not make this, in my eyes, a very principled decision to vote yes on 205. Number three, the third reason Prop 205 has the potential to destroy Arizona's smoke shops. Number four, Prop 205 has fake grow rights. Number five, Prop 205 gives the existing medical marijuana dispensaries a monopoly on the Arizona marijuana market, all right? The sixth reason, Prop 205 allows your employer to fire you for using marijuana, even if the marijuana was used legally in your own home. The seventh reason, Prop 205 creates a new marijuana police agency in Arizona while leaving the harsh felony penalties in place for most marijuana offenses. And then the eighth reason, Prop 205 does not define what a marijuana plant is, okay? It is not defined in Prop 205 whatsoever. The ninth reason, Prop 205 does almost nothing to take marijuana out of the hands of drug dealers who sell marijuana illegally. And the 10th reason, and the most important reason why every libertarian should vote no, Prop 205 also fails to adequately address firearms protections, DUI protections, parental protections, raid and search protections, loss of rights protections, and post-conviction relief. So those are my 10 points. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the rock back to the chairman.
All right. So I'm going to hit them one by one. First of all, the destruction of medical marijuana in Arizona. Prop 205 will not destroy medical marijuana in Arizona, and I'm basing this on having seen Amendment 64, which came into Colorado after we had a medical system in Colorado. In Colorado, the way it worked is you would go into a dispensary after Amendment 64 passed, after the 1-year period when they were able to open up retail shops, and basically we had this two-tiered system. If you had a red card, it was a red card in Colorado, you would go into the left side of the dispensary, and then you wouldn't have the excise tax. It didn't have the same taxation on it because it was for medical purposes. If you didn't have a red card, you'd show your driver's license, you'd go to the right side of the dispensary, and you'd pay the extra taxes on it. So it didn't destroy the medical system. It worked in concert with it. They ended up merging the existing medical regulation agency that existed with the recreational agency. They went from the medical, whatever it was, to what they call the MED, Marijuana Enforcement Division, which goes back to the police agency. It doesn't really create a new one. What it does is it ends up merging the existing one so it covers recreational and medical, or at least that's how they implemented it in Colorado. The no decriminalization for felony offenses, this is kind of a red herring. Arizona right now is one of the few states that's left where every marijuana possessory offense is a felony. All marijuana possessory offenses are felonies. If I have a single bud of marijuana, that is a felony. If I have a pound of marijuana, that is a felony. It doesn't change being a felony from the tiniest little bit to a large amount. Under Prop 205, possession of under an ounce would no longer be a felony, would no longer be a crime at all. And yes, Prop 205 doesn't change whether or not it would be a felony from above an ounce up to a pound or 2 pounds or whatever the cap is on the low-level felony. But it does take all of those low-level interactions with cops, all those low-level arrests. Those are not only not felonies anymore, they're not misdemeanors, they're not civil offenses, they're nothing. Literally, there is no reason for a cop to approach you for a tiny amount of marijuana anymore. And that's huge because that's how so many people get into our criminal justice system. It's based on this interaction for, holding a quarter a pot, which is nothing. So not locking those people up by itself, that would be a reason to vote for Prop 205. The fact that this law doesn't fix every other law on the books is a reason to fix them in the future. It's not a reason to not vote to make this better. Destroying smoke shops, I don't even understand what that means, like why Prop 205 would have anything with it. And if anything, Prop 205 makes it so that all of the paraphernalia laws are struck from the books. There is no more such thing as marijuana paraphernalia, so there's no more BS reason why a cop can arrest you. The fake grow rights, the grow rights in Prop 205 are the same as the grow rights that they were under Amendment 64. You can have 6 plants at home. I grew a plant. I started growing a plant the day after Amendment 64 passed in violation of federal law. But, the feds never found my house. That is there as a safeguard against the taxation provision. Because if the taxes and the regulation get too crazy, the fact that every single Arizonan can grow up to 6 plants in their own house and that you can help other people grow means that it's a safety valve to make sure that the taxation doesn't get too onerous. The existing dispensaries get to apply for a recreational license, but they don't get a privilege above and beyond other people applying. There are a large number of licenses, which makes Prop 205 way better than the initiative that got killed in Ohio, where they had 10 people who were pre-selected, who were corporate cronies, who were given licenses ahead of time. Not defining a marijuana plant, that's going to get sorted out. And, you know, taking marijuana away from illegal drug dealers, here's the thing, right? Under Prop 205, when marijuana is legal in Arizona, you can decide, I want to go to a store. You can also decide you want to go to a black market marijuana dealer on the street. You can still buy black market marijuana. It's going to be a question of whether or not you want to expose yourselves to those criminal penalties. The firearms protection, that's a big deal, but that's a big deal under medical. The Ninth Circuit case that just came down, there was a woman who was denied buying a firearm because she had a medical marijuana card. She didn't even use marijuana. She chose not to, and the courts upheld her being denied her Second Amendment rights just for having the card, not even anything else. So that problem is there whether Prop 205 passes or doesn't pass. And now that I hit all those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am very appalled by some of your statements because I do not agree one bit. I actually have read Prop 205, and I cannot disagree with you more on a number of things. First thing, how it destroys the medical marijuana program. Prop 205 takes the Arizona medical marijuana program away from the Department of Health Services and gives it to the new Department of Licenses and Controls. Okay, let me say that one more time. The new Department of Licenses and Controls, all right? It only leaves 22 licenses for private citizens like you and I, Nicholas, to go out and open a dispensary out of the 143 licenses, okay? It is a very small number. It is not for the public interest. It really, there is so, okay, let me slow down just a hair. If the Arizona medical marijuana dispensary owners control the Arizona medical marijuana program, it could result in medical marijuana patients' rights being sacrificed in order to generate more profits for the marijuana dispensary programs. Want to know why? Because it is a 7-man board, okay, the enforcement agency of marijuana, and 3 of those board members will be dispensary owners in Arizona, ultimately leading to from these dispensary owners going from millionaires literally to billionaires overnight, and it is guaranteeing that while taking the free market principles, which make us libertarian, okay, and flush it down the pipes for a special interest marijuana program. While, you know, Arizona, and another thing, Arizona's medical marijuana program is far from perfect, okay? It really is. And more than, you know, there are 90,000 medical marijuana patients in Arizona. Not to mention how this is literally going to take us from 90,000 patients, which 100 dispensaries can barely keep up with, and go to 1.5 million patients overnight. Well, it's going to be until 2018 that you can purchase marijuana in a dispensary anyway. And that's another thing. They say that you cannot purchase marijuana in a dispensary until 2018. Well, anywhere I've been, well, actually, I can't really say that right now, but I mean, how many people do you know get gifted marijuana? Because that's what the legal definition is right now until the actual first dispensary opens up. Now with the big reason, the big thing for me is the decriminalization issue. You know, it has no meaningful decriminalization. I'm going to explain really quick. Prop 205 allows adults to legally grow 6 plants, okay? But if an adult breaks the law by having a 7th plant in a city that's banned, so cities can ban growing rights, all right? So cities have the power and their city councils to ban growing rights. And if a city bans it and a person has 7 plants, they are subject to class 4 felony, which is likely a mandatory prison sentence for the growth of marijuana. Another prime example, Prop 205 allows adults to legally possess 5 grams of marijuana concentrates, otherwise known as wax, dabs, you know, clear, shatter, however you want to call it, hash, butter, live resin, rosin. If an adult breaks the law and possesses more than 5 grams of marijuana concentrates, they'll be charged with a class 4 felony. You know, and I don't know about you, Nicholas, but 5 grams of concentrates really isn't that much. I go through more of that in a month, I promise you. You know, a class 4 felony is a mandatory prison sentence. And another example that Prop 205 says that any person who possesses an amount of marijuana for sale or resale is guilty of a class 4 felony. And that's where I go into, well, where am I going to get this free marijuanas? You can't. It's impossible. The free market does not work like that, Nicholas. You know, and people, the police can literally say that if your marijuana could be used for sale. So if you could be charged with the intent to sell if you have over an ounce of marijuana. Even reselling legal store-bought marijuana to another consenting adult is considered a felony under Prop 205 because it doesn't decriminalize marijuana possession. The sponsors of Prop 205 want us all to believe that marijuana is somehow safe enough to sell to all adults in a retail setting, but still dangerous enough to justify sending adults to prison for breaking marijuana laws. And I'm not buying it, Nicholas. I hope that Arizona Libertarians don't buy into this proposition, and I hope that the rest of the country sees that this is a failing proposition that is it will be the first legalization without having decriminalization on the books across the country. You know, so why wasn't decriminalization included into Prop 205? Well, after all, like I said, no other state has ever tried to legalize marijuana prior to decriminalizing it first. The sad truth is that Prop 205 does not include marijuana decriminalization because marijuana felonies keep the retail prices of marijuana higher and drive more customers to the retail dispensaries, which clearly benefit the medical marijuana dispensaries who are paying for Prop 205. You know, you can go down. The dispensary I shop at, Swell Pharmacy, is one of the biggest contributors to Prop 205. And I'm sorry, you know, Swell Pharmacy, you are my dispensary of choice, but I know that you are a huge contributor. But with that, I'm going to pass.
So this idea that cities can ban growing rights, that it's one of those things where it's technically correct, but it's not correct. Cities can ban having commercial grows of more than 6 plants, but the 6-plant personal grow is something that is enshrined in the proposition. It's something that can't be taken away by any locality or municipality, the same as it was in the Colorado law. And what that does is, again, it creates that safety valve. In Colorado, cities like Colorado Springs, Douglas County, Colorado, Aurora for a time, they would all say, well, we're not going to have any dispensaries in our city. We're not going to have any grows in our city. And those people that live there, that lets them home grow. You know, I'm going to go back to this beer I have in my hand. If I really don't want to pay taxes on my beer, if beer's way too expensive to buy at the liquor store, I have buckets and kettles and all the stuff I need to homebrew because homebrewing is legal. And so I'm able to have that safety valve. I'm able to say, look, I'm going to go buy the barley. I'm going to buy the yeast. I'm going to make this myself if that's something that I feel like I want to do. And so that freedom is enshrined in the proposition to make sure that nothing can go too far the other way. You know, it's very frustrating for me because I'm hearing these hypothetical arguments about what could happen and what might happen and how things would be impossible. But I lived in Colorado after Amendment 64 passed. And just like Prop 205, from the day Amendment 64 passed until the first dispensary opened, there was a full year. I grew my plant within that full year. It turns out that most marijuana users are kind people generally and will give you seeds to grow your own plant. They will share their marijuana with you. They will give things to you without remuneration. And you have to remember, this is a big piece that the anti-Prop 205 people are avoiding, which is there isn't another proposition on the ballot. You're going to go into the voting booth, or like me, you're going to have this, Arizona ballot that you have available. And your choice is, I either vote yes, I want Prop 205. I want to stop caging people for holding less than an ounce of weed. I want to make it legal for people to grow their own marijuana. I want to make it so that the money goes into the pockets of retail dispensaries instead of Mexican drug cartels. You can vote yes for that, or you can vote no. You can vote no and say, you know what? I want to keep caging anyone who can't get a medical card. I want to keep caging, young people, African Americans who aren't able to afford to jump through the hoops of the medical system. I want to stop the progress until we get things perfect. Those are the only two choices you have on your ballot. If you had some magic initiative that made it so that you could grow up to 12 plants and you could have 300 dispensaries and that was on the ballot, and we were having an argument of, do I vote for this one or do I vote for that one? That would be a little more fair. But what Van is suggesting is that libertarians would go into the ballot box and say, I have an opportunity to stop caging other human beings for what they put into their bodies, and I'm going to vote no because it's not good enough for me. That, to me...
All right, got the rock back. So 36-2856, localities control marijuana and marijuana products, okay? So localities may enact reasonable ordinances or rules that are not in conflict with this act or with the rules enacted pursuant to this chapter. That restricts the smoking of marijuana, the production, the processing, the manufacture of marijuana and marijuana products when it is, injury, they'll consider it, injurious to the environment. And let me go back to the fake marijuana grow rights, because this is really important, guys. This is the staple. This is, I think, one of the biggest crucial pieces, across Arizona, because it gives Prop 205 gives city councils the right to ban growing based on the word nuisance. Prop 205 initially appears to say that all adults over age 21 can legally grow 6 marijuana plants at their residence. Unfortunately, that's not the entire story. Prop 205 does say that adults over age of 21 can legally grow marijuana plants at their residence. However, Prop 205 says that any city or county in Arizona can choose to ban personal marijuana growing throughout the entire city if local city council or city council decides that marijuana growing is a nuisance to a considerable number of people. What exactly is a nuisance? And what is exactly a considerable amount of people? Unfortunately, those questions will be answered by a handful of city council members across Arizona who have repeatedly demonstrated that they hate marijuana. And after the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act was implemented back in 2011, we attended virtually every single, as the Safer Arizona, the activists, we attended almost every single city council meeting across the state. And whenever a medical marijuana issue was being discussed, we quickly learned that most of Arizona city councils weren't afraid to admit that they hate, marijuana and marijuana cultivation. Many of the Arizona cities and counties have already made a long list of reasons why to consider personal marijuana growing to be a nuisance. In fact, numerous cities and counties in Arizona have already banned medical marijuana growing because they feel that it is a nuisance, despite the fact that those types of bans are seemingly illegal with Proposition 203 that is in effect right now. Unfortunately, these city councils would not actually be required to prove in court that marijuana growing actually causes a real nuisance in order for them to pass an ordinance to ban marijuana growing in their city. A city or council ordinance to ban marijuana growing would only need to be passed by a majority vote of the handful of city council or city council members to actually enact that. I personally myself, and I'm nothing against Mormons or anything, but across Arizona there are a lot of Mormons that that have positions in city council and in the legislature. You're not going to get these grow rights when this is why I call it fake marijuana grow rights. In case you somehow live in an Arizona city that does not allow marijuana growing, Prop 205 also says that a person's landlord can choose to ban marijuana growing at their property. Now, if a person grows 6 marijuana plants at their residence where the landlord has banned marijuana growing, 205 can actually make that a Class 1 misdemeanor instead of just making it a violation of the lease agreement. This means that a person who grows 6 marijuana plants in a residence where the landlord has banned marijuana growing could actually be charged with both a Class 1 misdemeanor for growing marijuana in a prohibited location and a Class 4 felony for illegal cultivation of marijuana, which is a...
Oh, I'm back. So here's the thing. There are these fights that are going to happen. My reading of Prop 205, and I read through the whole proposition. It's a long proposition, and you know, if you feel like you need to read the whole thing, please do. As a lawyer, I'll tell you, a lot of us don't read all of everything. It's kind of a secret in the business. But my reading of it is that while the municipalities can declare growing a nuisance, that nuisance declaration doesn't apply to the individual growing the 6 plants in their own residence. It applies to larger grows that are above the 12 plant number in a single household that's in 205. But let's stipulate for a moment, just for the purposes of this debate, to make it interesting, that Van's absolutely right. Let's stipulate that there are going to be municipalities and cities that can say you can't grow there. Let's stipulate that there are going to be landlords who, exercising their property rights, are going to say you can't grow if you rent from me. Let's stipulate all of that. Right now, nobody gets to grow in their house, no matter what city you live in, no matter who your landlord is. If you grow, you are a distributor, and you're going to face a serious penalty for cultivation, much bigger than possession. After Prop 205, if even one city in the state of Arizona, and it'll be way more than one because a lot of city councils are lazy and aren't going to bother with this sort of thing, let somebody grow, there's going to be more people with more freedom than there are right now. And that's how I judge this as a libertarian. Do I have taxes that come with it? Is it going to give money to government schools? Is there going to be a regulatory agency? Yes, yes, and yes. But are there going to be less people thrown in cages? Are there going to be more people who are able to exercise their freedoms, even if, like the freedom to drink alcohol, that freedom comes with some sort of tax cost? Yes. And so I would much rather put that into the hands of people and say, look, if you want to do this without risking your livelihood, without risking, your freedom, if you want to go to a store and buy a known quantity of marijuana where you know what strain you're getting, you know how good it is, and trust me, I bought marijuana in Colorado after it was legal. You get much better stuff with much better quality control and much better security. And I'll tell you what, there isn't a street dealer out there that checks ID to see whether or not you're of age to purchase. But if you go to a retail dispensary in Colorado, they check ID right up front. So if you're worried about kids having marijuana, legalizing it is the best thing that you can do. But I would much rather put that choice into the hands of the citizen to decide, do I want to pay these taxes? Do I want to go through whatever hoops I have to go through? Do I want to comply with this law? Then make it so that nobody's able to do it. And that's the thing. If you vote no on 205, what you're saying is you're not going to give that freedom to everybody else. Look, if you don't like the retail dispensaries, if you don't like the taxation, if you don't like moving out of the medical system, buy from a street dealer or buy in the medical system still. Choose not to join into this, but don't mess everything up for the rest of Arizonans who don't share that same view for you. The whole point of being a libertarian is to give everyone their choices. And what a lot of the no on 205 people are basically saying is, if I can't have a law that I want, that I personally am happy with, I'm going to keep locking up my fellow Arizonans, or keep allowing the government to lock up my fellow Arizonans for possessing a plant, because I think the way they legalized it could have been better, and they could have defined some words better, and I'm mad that you can get fired for it, and all of these other quibbles. The truth is, there's one choice on your ballot. You vote yes on Prop 205, and it means you stop caging people for possessing marijuana under an ounce. You vote no on Prop 205, it means you keep caging people for possessing marijuana of under an ounce. And what are you going to tell that person when they get taken away and thrown in jail? You're going to tell them, well, you're not really free. If we had a good legalization initiative, I would have supported it. But I'm glad they put you in the cage, and maybe in 2 years or 4 years or whatever, we're going to come get something better. If the advocates who were anti-Prop 205 had gotten a proposition on the ballot and had been able to do the follow-through, they'd have a much better argument. But right now, what it is sour grapes and a bunch of people who primarily, I'm not trying to go ad hominem on this, but a lot of the advocates for voting no on Prop 205 are people who are already part of a medical system where only a few special people who get a doctor's recommendation, who already jump through all these goofy hoops they're telling us are so terrible, are the ones who are able to use it. So what I say to them is, let your fellow Arizonans have the freedom that you have. and stop caging people for what they put in their bodies and start spending our law enforcement dollars on something.
So with this card right here, it costs $300 and it protects me, which it actually protects me more than Prop 205, and I'll go into that. But I want to backpedal a little bit to a few statements that you made, Nick. And, you know, this will be locked in place. Reversing this piece, this proposition will be a lot harder than just having a new one that is done right the first time with decriminalization in 2018. We have a better chance of being principled by voting no on Prop 205 because in 2018 we will have the opportunity to go in and do it right the first time. There are too many loose ends, there are too many loopholes, and this is a scary proposition. It really is. It scares me because we lock this in forever, and Arizona is officially, we are the unfree state of marijuana growing across the country. It would be a disaster. I don't see how giving seniority to these dispensaries, making them turn from millionaires to billionaires overnight is anything that is worthwhile. I'd rather everybody in Arizona have an opportunity to reap the benefits rather than just a select few. And with that statement, Nick, I want to say one thing, and I learned it at the convention. And actually, I've had it repeated over, I've been hearing it being repeated, but, principles, we have this thing in the Libertarian Party about principles and pragmatism, and principles are pragmatic. That's the point. When you do unprincipled things, you get unpragmatic results.
Oh man, you threw it back to me. Man, you're fast. So you still have your card. If Prop 205 passes, you still have your medical card. The medical system stays in place. Prop 205 doesn't dismantle the medical system, and this was how it worked in Colorado. And I keep going back to Colorado because I've already seen this movie before. A lot of the discussion we're having applies to the California proposition because a lot of it, as you'll agree, it was backed by MPP, and they took the Colorado model and they've been moving it from state to state to state. The only time that the Colorado model has not worked was in Ohio, where they said, hey, here's 10 people who are going to get rich off of this. And the voters are like, no, hell no. But that wasn't an MPP thing. MPP pushed back against it. In any event, the medical system's still in place. If you think medical is better, you can still have your medical card. You can still get medical marijuana. But I will not support throwing people in cages. I will not support continuing to arrest people, to continue to give people criminal records. If I have the opportunity to give people real freedom, like they actually don't get arrested, they don't get humiliated, they don't have a permanent record, I'm going to take that opportunity even if it comes with taxation. And that's the bottom line. And I've experienced it in Colorado. I've been through it. So I'm talking from experience. I know this will make things better, and we can make things even better in the future, but stopping this kind of progress here over some wording and some particulars is not.
Well, that's where you and I disagree, Nicholas, because I believe that doing it right in 2018 would be the best approach. Right now, our hands are tied. There is no... We don't have any guarantees with Proposition 205. There's a lot of loose ends and a bunch of loopholes. Real quick, back to the possessing ounce, okay, and people going to jail for an ounce. How many people do you know that have gone to jail for an ounce of marijuana in Arizona? Because it doesn't happen. Let me tell you why. Nobody is currently serving time in jail or in prison for possession of marijuana involving less than an ounce of weed. In Arizona, anyone who is charged with possession of marijuana is indeed given a Class 6 felony initially. However, the state is required to give that person the option to participate in the drug diversion program. Okay, what that is, it consists of urinating in a cup and taking drug classes in lieu of being sent to jail or prison and given a felony. If the person completes the drug diversion program successfully, the state dismisses that Class 6 felony charge completely and as if it never happened. And if a person gets a medical marijuana card while participating in the drug diversion program, they are even allowed to test positive for marijuana. So I still believe that voting no for Proposition 205, okay, and having to maybe go through that is better, okay, is more principled, okay, as opposed to being pragmatic to, you know, being able to do it right in 2018 instead of the long way.
You know, depending on a drug diversion program, for a prosecutor to let you out of a felony is trusting the state. And I was a public defender for 5 years, and I don't trust the state. So I'd much rather have a law that says specifically that it is not a crime, not a misdemeanor, and not a felony. I'm a pass.
Okay. Now another reason how Prop 205, how it does not actually say what a marijuana plant actually is, despite our demands. The authors of Proposition 205, the dispensary owners, okay, have refused to define what a marijuana plant actually is. Okay, is a marijuana seed a plant? Could that be considered a plant under Prop 205? Is the marijuana trims, the cutting, considered to be a marijuana plant under Prop 205? The answer is yes. If police break 10 branches, okay, off one marijuana plant, is that considered still to be one marijuana plant if the branches are broken off? How do you know? How do they know? Or is that considered to be 11 marijuana plants with 10 branches plus the original one? Unfortunately, law enforcement will be answering these questions for us, Mr. Chairman, because of the authors of Proposition 205, the special interest groups of the dispensaries. And I mean, just what they're defining as a marijuana plant, that is not defined in Proposition 205. That is another reason why I am voting no and why I feel that it is inadequate.
You know, I would rather have that fight in court over some cop and prosecutor trying to come in with a bunch of 10 broken branches and tell me that I had a bunch of plants than right now where any amount of marijuana is a felony.
The main reason now that I also am, like I said, is it doesn't adequately address firearms issues, DUI protections, parental protections, raid and searches protections, and loss of rights protections, and the post-conviction relief as well. I mean, we have a big opportunity in Arizona. We really do. And with my final 2 minutes here, I want to stress to you, okay, me, myself being a marijuana smoker, being actively participating in marijuana, I believe that Prop 205 does more harm than good. And I strongly urge all people, all Arizonans, not just libertarians, Republicans, Democrats, libertarians, whatever side of the aisle you are on, this proposition does not give us real freedom. Real freedom would be being able to grow as many plants outside as we want, okay? And I mean, up to a reasonable number. But I mean, real freedom would not have any felonies on the table. Real freedom would not have a marijuana police force enacted in Arizona. Real freedom wouldn't have, you know, loose ends where marijuana protections are given, you know, to everybody. You know, there are too many loose ends with Prop 205. I do not agree that voting yes on Prop 205 is a principled decision. It is one of the most pragmatic decisions to make a immediate right here, right now decision. But what we're going to find out with Prop 205 is that it is not real legalization. I've already gone over why. And for libertarians to say that, you know, Proposition 205 is something that, you know, all libertarians should vote for, no.
I'm not going to spend 2 more years putting people in cages because I want something perfect. All of those are already there. They're already part of the existing system. But it's time to stop caging our fellow Arizonans. It's time to vote yes on Prop 205.
Fellow Arizonans, I want you to vote no on Proposition 205. Anybody who is caught with less than an ounce of marijuana does not technically go to jail, okay? They are given a drug diversion program, and I myself, okay, have dealt with this program in Arizona, and you know what? It is what it is. But I would rather deal with that program for 6 months or a year, however long the state decides, and then pass Proposition 205, do it wrong this time, and then forever reap just the backlash that it's going to happen. People are still going to be going to jail. And who wants to jump on something that the media is pushing so hard? I have yet to mention that the Arizona media is completely pushing this proposition. Please vote no. In 2018, we can do it right. And I hope the Libertarians